Stop sabotaging yourself. I know, if you're like me, you're thinking, no duh, but how? And so today I wanted to talk about one of the ways that I was able to stop sabotaging myself. I had been on a journey where I was bodybuilding. I had decided to become a bodybuilder and start training and wanted to get myself on a stage within a year. So I had already been, workout routine and had been building muscle, etc. But I was like, yeah, I'm going to get on stage in a year. And it didn't happen. Part of that was that was right at the time when COVID hit and gyms closed down and everything else. So that was a fair enough excuse. Year two, same thing. I was determined I was going to get on stage and I was going to win that show. Um, and year two, I went bankrupt with my company that my ex and I had together. And yeah, it was a really good excuse to postpone getting on stage. But by year three, I actually had gone through a divorce at this point after being married for almost 17 years. And I was tired of making excuses. Now I was ready to really show myself that I could do it. And it wasn't about the workout routine because I had that down. That was kind of my coping mechanism for everything in my life. Uh, but I was terrified of the cut of the 20 weeks or so. It maybe for some people who have it dialed in, it's a little bit less, but essentially 20 weeks of my life that I would be cutting my calories so that I could lose body fat to get really lean to be on stage. I was utterly terrified of that. And so I resorted at that point to an exercise that I had done many, many times before, essentially self limiting belief work. I wanted to get underneath the hood and feel around in there and see if there were some things, some beliefs, and some static and some negativity around that specific piece of getting ready for a bodybuilding show, the dieting piece, the cut piece. I definitely could sense that I had some anxiety and some fear around that. So I did one of my favorite exercises, like I said, that I had been doing off and on for years. The first time that I found self limiting belief work, I did a worksheet on like each subject of my life, parenting, and also my relationship, money, of course. And interestingly, I did one about my health. And at the time when I first found self limiting belief work, I think it was 2015 or 2016, I actually would spend most afternoons in bed. I could usually only last till about 2 p.m. on my good days and was struggling with a lot of fatigue and fibromyalgia. And I have found those worksheets that I did at the time around self-limiting beliefs, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to recover. I didn't know if I was developing a some kind of a disease or an autoimmune condition. I didn't know what was going on at the time. So it was interesting to kind of fast forward and utilize self-limiting beliefs after I had been working out, at least 5 days a week for 3 years. And, it's some of the rewarding pieces of doing this work over time is that you get those milestones that you get to look back on and see your journal entries or whatever and realize like, wow, I've actually come a long ways. And this is what I was thinking at this time. And here's where I am today. But that's not exactly the subject of today's conversation around self-limiting belief work. But as we've been talking about affirmations, I wanted to talk about this piece because this is where I believe the work really comes in to make positive affirmations relevant and for them to really be effective in our life. So the way that you do self-limiting belief work is that you do a brain dump where you just write down or type out everything that you feel about a certain situation or about yourself, um, your negative thoughts, your beliefs, your struggles, your inadequacies, and then you take those and you rewrite each one into something positive or something neutral. It doesn't always have to be positive. So I was going to share what I utilized for my 2022 competition. I summarized everything, made it concise, and I printed it and put it on my refrigerator. And I actually read it every day, I think before or after I went to the gym in the morning. And I would read it when I was having a hard time. And one of my first limiting beliefs that I wrote was, I'm not good at dieting. And I didn't call it a positive affirmation, I called it an empowering statement. So it's kind of weird to show a computer screen on a laptop, but essentially, I had one column for my limiting belief and another column for my empowering statement. I said, I'm not good at dieting. And the way that I was able to turn that around is, I have to eat, don't I? This is just adding structure. It's a plan. It's not a diet. I don't even have to think about it. So it was kind of taking the charge off of the idea of dieting, which was giving me a lot of anxiety to think about. And I called it a plan, something that I don't have to think about. It actually makes my life easier. I already know what I'm eating, and yeah, I can just take it easy while I go through this stage. I wrote, I don't have the discipline. And instead of saying something that I would argue with in my mind every time I read it, saying like, I'm super disciplined, I actually wrote, I have the ability to decide what I want to do. So anytime that I thought I'm not disciplined, either way, I may not be disciplined, which I am actually incredibly disciplined, but my little negative inner critic didn't want to admit that. But I reminded myself that I have the ability to decide in every moment. I wrote, this takes too long. I don't have the staying power. And my empowering belief was, one day at a time, one choice at a time. I'm very committed to my goals. So instead of saying like, oh, this isn't going to take that long, that sort of self argument, I was saying, maybe it does take a long time, but we're going to do this one day at a time. So it's a way of just sort of talking yourself through your own beliefs. I like to do it in a gentle and self compassionate way. And I'm going to skip down to the end where I said, I don't have what it takes. And I borrowed a line from Marianne Williamson, which is, I wrote, just because that's one of my favorite quotes. And I wrote, when I said, I don't have what it takes, I said, I am powerful beyond measure. And if you haven't heard the quote from Marianne Williamson, where she says, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate, but that we are powerful beyond measure, I recommend looking that quote up and reading the context around it from Marianne Williamson's book. I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but it's an incredible thought that I like to sometimes dig into. But long story short, I utilized those in my difficult mornings, where I didn't have the energy to work out, or where my posing routine wasn't going the way I wanted it to, or I'd get on the scale. At that time, to prepare for a show, you're monitoring your weight every single day. And if I wasn't making the progress that I needed to be, knowing how many weeks out I was, it would be very discouraging. But I would continue to read that in my dark times, in my self-doubt. And I'll show you a picture of myself once I got on stage here. But I want to point something out to you. So that's Ashley 2022, competing in women's figure. This is an amateur bodybuilding show. So if you're expecting a big muscle woman, I was not competing in that level. So this is just beginner level, essentially. But I don't know if you can notice, but if you look at my two different arms, my left arm is actually much smaller than my right arm. And I injured myself 8 weeks before the show, could barely put my hair into a ponytail, could barely lift my arm, and was slowly rehabbing that arm. It was making posing very difficult, but I had made a determination I was going to get on stage, whether I felt ready or not, whether it was at the perfect weight or not. I was going to get on stage. I was going to smile. I was going to make eye contact, and I was going to have a great time. I was going to enjoy it. It wasn't going to be pressure. I was just going to have fun, because this was for me. I was doing this for me, and I was going to make the very best of it. And the thing is, once I got on stage, once I finally got ready, it was a local show, so there were a lot of friends and acquaintances in the crowd cheering for me. And I had a great time. I just had fun with it. And what was amazing is that when it came time to call the awards, it almost became embarrassing, because they called my name for every single one, including one I didn't even know what it was. And I think I got 5 awards in different categories. One of them was best poser. But essentially, I cleaned it out. I was like, I wanted to tell the other competitors, like, I promise I didn't bribe the judges, but I could barely carry all of my trophies when I walked out of there. Um, that wasn't the reason I was doing it, but because I think I was exuding that joy and that confidence and enjoying myself on stage. It showed in all of that work that I had done to lighten my own inner conflict. Um, it showed up in stage presence, and it was a beautiful experience. I had one of the head judges encourage me to go on and do another show so that I could potentially win a pro card. There weren't enough competitors at the show that I was in for that. But I felt complete. I was really happy with that journey and the 3 years that I had spent leading up to it, knowing all the self doubt that I had been through, and my determination to get on stage no matter what. And then the work that I did to work through those limiting beliefs to show myself that I could do a cut, that I could do 20 weeks of calorie restriction and get myself to, I don't know exactly what my body fat percentage was. I think it was a little below 10% here in this picture. Like I said, it was an amateur show, but I felt great about it. Haven't had the need to repeat it. It's definitely, essentially, I mean, it hijacks your lifestyle. I mean, you have to give it everything you have at the time when you're doing it. So haven't felt called to do that again, but I loved that I was able to do that and show that to myself. And why I share that is just because it's so powerful when we really stop and listen to what's going on inside of our head. I mean, I know we all have, not everybody has crazy voices in their head, but I think a lot of us do. And if you're like me, you may have this background static, just um, buzzing and crackling that you're not really aware of until you tune into it. Like if you picture the old television sets that I don't know that many of us have have even experienced anymore. But when you're tuning into a station, there'd be all this static. You can still sometimes do that on a radio station, and as you're finding the signal, you get that crackle. And that's how I feel like self-limiting belief really works, is that you're dialing in and bringing these negative inner thoughts into your awareness so that then you can address it. You can ask yourself if it's true. You can look at it. You can examine it. You now have the cognitive ability to address it, whereas before it was just playing in the back of your mind, unaddressed and unaware. So that's one of the reasons why I love self-limiting belief work. That's one of the reasons I've done it so many times in my own life. Um, and I think you come to a place where it sort of becomes just natural and habitual as you think something potentially negative or whatever. You can address it right there in that moment. So it's not always that we have to rely on worksheets to get through life, but certainly the work is worth it. If you haven't done it before, I highly recommend it. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave a comment, particularly if you want to hear more about the bodybuilding journey or self-limiting belief work. I can do additional videos on that topic or any topic really that you have in mind. This is really fun for me. I wake up in the morning with my bedhead. I think today is bedhead 20. I actually went back and counted. And yeah, this is my commitment to me to just keep showing up. And it's now becoming my commitment to you if you're in this space here with me, like you are right now, if you're listening in. And yeah, I the way I see this is as a dialogue. I'm not a preacher and I'm not an advisor. I just like to share what has worked for me on my journey and what's given me results and what's been effective. And I like to share the mistakes that I've made. I think those are funny. So I've done a lot of really stupid stuff trying to change my life and to grow. And yeah, if I can save anybody else the embarrassment, and certainly I'll share. But if you're listening in today, it is a Wednesday. I hope that you have an amazing hump day. And any other time of the week, I hope you're having an amazing day and that you realize that you're powerful beyond measure.